the leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Wrong way. Welcome to the place.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield.
The leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View. All right. Thank you for listening. This is Jessie. I'm happy to be back here with you. This is my Thursday night, April 28th, 2016 show. Topic for tonight, Syria. Yes, I know we brushed up against Syria, but I've never done a show just on Syria, the civil war, and what's going on. All right, so let's start with recent news. First of all, if you've been so caught up in the U.S. politics, things you may not know. Well, I think everybody's aware there's a civil war going on in Syria, unless you've been living in a cave somewhere with no connection to the outside world. All right, so we've established that. There's ISIS, or ISIL, or Daesh. Take your pick. They are trying to run roughshod over everybody in the area. And they really want to expand their caliphate globally. We've talked about that in other episodes. All right, now, there was recently a hospital bombing in Syria, and there's also peace talks going on that the UN is hosting. So, let's start off with the peace talks and see how they're going. I've got some audio pulled up. Let's take a listen.
Announced a number of key actions we're taking to continue accelerating.
The United Nations planned peace talks appeared to be on the point of breaking down several times this week after the main armed opposition party walked out of the talks. Fighting has also picked back up in the region, and all parties involved have warned that they intend to escalate the fighting in the 5-year-old civil war. But the United Nations Special Envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, claims that both sides are merely posturing and that peace talks should continue into next week. He believes that delegations will return to negotiations even though opposition forces have resumed fighting after they claimed that the government was not willing to give in certain crucial areas.
That doesn't sound like productive peace talks to me. I don't know about you. We've got fighting still continuing, and we've got one side claiming the other side's not willing to give. That sounds like the standoff at the OK Corral, and we're just waiting for the bodies to fall. All right. So now that we know that the peace talks for the Syrian region are essentially failing, what else has been going on in Syria? Well, there was a hospital bombing. I hate it when hospitals are bombed. I'm sorry. In my mind, unless they're being used for offensive capabilities, which they should not be used for offensive capabilities. Keep hospitals neutral, people. I'm sorry. Don't give anyone a reason to target your hospital. Hospitals are supposed to be places where people can get medical treatment. Let's not aggravate the situation. Let's leave them alone. I'm sorry. I just don't agree with hospitals being targeted. You can target people that are firing on you, but you should not fire on. I wish hospitals could be declared neutral, and no one with a weapon should be allowed near them, except the police or the guards. But unfortunately, in Syria, the police are part of the problem, so that may not work. All right. I don't agree with bombing hospitals. It happened. Let's move on. All right. Here's a report, some audio about that. I will post the link as to where I got this for you on my blog site. All right, ready to listen in with me? Let's listen to this audio.
Syria's ceasefire is in tatters. The latest, an airstrike on an opposition hospital in Aleppo. This one supported by Doctors Without Borders and the Red Cross. Dozens killed, including children and at least 3 doctors. One of them, the last pediatrician. So severe the attack, the Red Cross issued a statement saying the destruction of the hospital are putting millions at grave risk. The bodies, the grief, piling pressure on faltering peace talks in Geneva.
In the last 48 hours, we have had an average of 1 Syrian killed every 25 minutes. 1 Syrian wounded every 13 minutes.
3 weeks of talks, 1,000 miles from the front lines, little progress. The two sides using the ceasefire to talk about political transition. But accusations, not compromises, traded.
The threats that emanated from the opposition who were here in Geneva before they sulked and got upset and left, these declarations were translated on the ground into attacks.
The opposition, for their part, pausing their participation, blaming the government for a renewed offensive, making talks meaningless. Within days of pulling back from the talks, opposition fighters last week on ceasefire, shown here in their own propaganda video, back to the battlefront. The UN envoy urging Russia and the United States to step in again, save the ceasefire, save the talks.
We need that to be urgently revitalized. And only the Russian Federation and the US, as they did when they launched suddenly everything related to the cessation hostilities, needed to come back again and relaunch it.
In the meantime, the killing is escalating. No date set for the next round of peace talks. The UN envoy planning a visit to Moscow next week. Urgency and peace, both in short supply.
All right, that was audio from a CNN video. Like I said, I will post the link. Now, if you heard the episode about Obama's trip to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and his talks with the Gulf Coast Council, let's review his stance and the Gulf Cooperation, sorry, it's Gulf Cooperation Council, not Gulf Coast Council, please excuse me, stance on Syria and Bashar al-Assad.
We remain united in our fight to destroy ISIL, or Daesh, which is a threat to all of us. And the United States will help our GCC partners ensure that their special operations forces are interoperable, and GCC nations will continue to increase their contributions to the fight against ISIL and the coalition that we've formed. We agreed to continue working closely to de-escalate and resolve regional conflicts. In Syria, the cessation of hostilities is obviously under tremendous strain, including continued violations by the Assad regime. This violence is yet another reminder that there is only one way to end this civil war, as our GCC partners agree: a transitional governing body, a new constitution with free elections, including a transition away from Assad. None of our nations have an interest in conflict with Iran. We welcome an Iran that plays a responsible role in the region, one that takes concrete, practical steps to build trust and resolve its differences with its neighbors by peaceful means and abides by international rules and norms.
All right, so as you heard, the GCC, otherwise known as
what are your
the Gulf
big takeaways?
Cooperation Council, is anti-Assad. They want Bashar al-Assad out of power. They want a new government in Syria. Now, as we've watched over the past few decades, instituting a new government in a country and making it stable and survivable isn't easy. Trust me, we tried. Iraq, look at Libya, look at Yemen. All these countries have fallen victim to governments that were stable for a while, were stable with support, and have, to some extent or other, collapsed. All right, let's get back to Syria. Who conducted the bombing? Give me just a minute, and I'll tell you what I found about the bombing. All right, the hospital was an MSF hospital. All right, you're going, wait a minute. Who's MSF? What are they? Let's talk about it for just a minute. MSF stands for Médecins Sans Frontières, so it's an independent medical humanitarian organization. Delivers emergency aid to people affected by armed conflicts, epidemics, natural disasters, and exclusion from healthcare. All right, so now that we've got that covered, they put out a statement about the hospital bombing, condemning it. Why don't we take a listen?
There's still a few hospitals still functioning in Aleppo, but after the killing of this pediatrician and the other, at least 4 medical staff that have been killed in this airstrike, the situation for these children is even more worrisome for sure.
You mentioned one thing that I found interesting. over the phone, and that is you think that this was a deliberate attack. Nick Robertson touched on that as well. Just explain to our audience why you think that.
Yes. So, first of all, there were 2 barrel bombs that fell in buildings close to the hospital, causing already a lot of wounded people. And a few minutes later, when all these wounded people were being brought to the hospital, and where all the relatives were in the gates of the hospitals trying to know how the relatives were doing, then the 3rd barrel bomb fell in the entrance of the hospital, killing tens of people. So this together with the fact that this hospital is very well known and has been there for many years, leads us to believe that there are many chances that this attack was deliberate.
So Russia's come out and just said that they're not responsible, they're not to blame. But you, Médecins Sans Frontières, you guys are calling for an independent investigation. Is that correct?
Exactly. We cannot ascertain who was responsible. We know that barrel bombs were used, and it's usually the Syrian government who uses these barrel bombs. But whatever the case, this needs to be clarified, and we are officially asking for an independent investigation to clarify who is responsible and whether this was a deliberate attack on one more hospital in Aleppo.
And just looking at your bio, you've traveled to disaster zones around the world. As you know, these staff members, these doctors are working in unimaginable, unthinkable conditions. How does one go about keeping workers safe in a climate like this?
It is just impossible for an aid worker to be safe in Aleppo now. Aid workers, and especially medical staff, are specifically targeted in this war. So basically, those who are there are people who know that very likely they will just die under the bombs, but despite that, they have decided to stay there and to help their citizens.
So this was not a Médecins Sans Frontières hospital. This was a hospital that you supported, that the organization supported. So have you then increased your medical supplies, the amount of medical supplies you're sending to this hospital? Or the hospitals in the area,
yes,
I should say.
Yes, we have been supporting this hospital for many years now, since 2012, together with another 22 medical facilities in Aleppo. And in the last months, we have been increasing our support because we just were afraid that this will happen, that the offensive coming to Aleppo will happen, and we wanted these hospitals to be as ready as possible.
Staffan de Mistura, the UN Special Envoy to Syria, is talking about the fact that the cessation of hostilities is certainly fragile.
All right, so we know that a hospital was bombed. I don't remember if that audio covered it, but the last remaining pediatrician in the area was killed in the bombing. It was very much an intentional bombing. Everybody knew where that hospital was. Like I said, keep your hospitals neutral. Please, people, don't give anyone a reason to bomb them. Now, who would do such a thing? Well, let's take a listen. I've got some audio. All right, if we're playing Connect the Dots here, which you know I like to do, me and my lovely dot connecting, Connect the Dots game, I don't think the U.S. bombed the hospital. There's only so many people with planes in that area. Who's the next largest one? Russia. Yes, I'm saying Russia bombed that hospital. They have a history of it. I've got some audio pulled up. Let's take a listen.
Rescue workers pulling the dead and wounded from a hospital in Aleppo, Syria, that activists say was struck by a Russian airstrike the previous day. Various reports suggest dozens of people were killed at the hospital, supported by Doctors Without Borders. There was no immediate comment from Russia, which has military-backed President Bashar al-Assad's regime since the end of September, and has been accused of deliberately targeting hospitals and clinics in opposition-held areas of Syria. The airstrike happened as the United Nations appealed for the U.S. and Russia to help revive peace talks and the ceasefire.
This round of talks have instead been overshadowed, let's be frank, by a substantial and indeed worrisome deterioration of the cessation of hostilities.
Talks aimed at ending the 5-year war in Syria grounded to a halt, with the government and opposition divided over fundamental issues, like whether the Assad regime remains in power. The Syrian regime and various opposition delegations are still not talking face-to-face, but using the UN as a go-between. The February ceasefire has been fraying in the past weeks as casualty figures from the violence continue to mount.
In the last 48 hours, we have had an average of 1 Syrian killed every 25 minutes. 1 Syrian wounded every 13 minutes.
The 2-week session that ended Wednesday was the third round of talks since the end of January.
All right, so like I said, we're playing connect the dots here. Russia wants Assad to stay in power. Everybody else is pretty much anti-Assad. Then you get a hospital bombed in a rebel-controlled area. Russia has a habit of bombing hospitals. There are only so many people with planes in the region. I'm sorry, my connect the dots lead me straight to Russia, even though they put out a statement saying, not us, don't look at us, look at the U.S., we didn't do it, look at the U.S., look over there. They doth protest too much. Alright, let's see what else we got on this. Alright, I've got some audio that it's from back in February, but it explains what's going on in the proxy war, so it's from Fox News. Let's take a listen.
Kurt Volker is a former U.S. ambassador to NATO. Where are we in this proxy war? I find it hard to keep score.
Well, I think the Russians are certainly advancing their agenda. They're putting out disinformation. They're engaging in fruitless diplomatic talks to tie up other countries and give them some sense of hope. And meanwhile, they're being very effective providing air cover to Syrian forces on the ground and surrounding Aleppo, creating a massive humanitarian crisis there. It probably was Russian bombs that hit these hospitals. They may not have known they were hospitals, but they certainly knew that their bombers were dropping ordnance there in order to support the Syrian military. Now, if it's a proxy war, the thing that I find a little shocking in this is that the U.S. is not really engaging in it. We're trying to go after ISIS minimally with airstrikes and minimally support some of the other forces there like the Kurds.
Wait, so we're just wanting our proxies to win basically without us. This is not to deny that a proxy war is underway, because it is.
Well, that's right. I think that the Syrian government is got a very clear strategy. They're going after the opposition in Syria, trying to rout them, really not touching ISIS very much. The Russians aren't touching ISIS. We're going after ISIS, but we're telling the people we're working with not to go after Assad. That doesn't give them any confidence in working with us, and so Saudi Arabia and Turkey are trying to step in to actually help them more. It's a completely disorganized effort and one that needs a lot more U.S. leadership.
What's Russia's end game?
I don't know that Russia needs to have an end game. I think that's the way we tend to think in the West. But for Putin, it's great to have a conflict where he can be the big power. It can show that Russia's a strong power in the Middle East. He gets to attack opponents of the United States. And this can go on without a resolution, and he'll be fine. As long as Assad stays in power and Russia keeps its military base, this is a benefit to Russia in the region.
The Saudis are active now militarily. What do they want?
The Saudis would like to topple Assad and see that the Sunnis that he is attacking are actually protected and safe in the country. And they're much less concerned about how extreme some of those Sunnis are and whether there's any bleeding between the moderate rebels, as we sometimes call them, and al-Qaeda or ISIS. The Saudis want to topple Assad and see that the Sunnis are protected.
Hundreds of thousands are dead, millions are displaced. How do you set up a safe zone in the middle of all this unsafeness?
You start with a no-fly zone. You've got to tell everybody.
That would be us, right?
No more flights. That would be us.
And we would tell Russia, we can't bomb anymore. And then when they bomb, then what?
We'd have to be willing to confront Russia. And I think the way you do that is you draw clear lines. And you say, these are the lines where we're going to fly, and nobody else flies there. And if they do, we're going to go after them. You can fly somewhere else, and we're not going to bother you there. And you create a zone that's not all of Syria, but a safe zone in Syria. And then you get ground forces that we'd have to take part in, but we'd also have to be leading others to establish a safe area on the ground.
And then if they do the flying, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm almost out of time. If we do the flying and they fly where we tell them not to fly, and we're
going to have to confront the Russians. I don't think they want to be in a fight with us any more than we want to be in a fight with them. But they would very much like to be in a few of our little NATO allies over there. They'd very much like to be in a couple or three of them a lot. They'd like that a lot. I'm not so sure about that. I think that they like showing that they're a tough guy until they're challenged. Once they're challenged, I think they'll respect boundaries if we draw them clearly. Look at the situation with Turkey. The Turks shot down a Russian fighter. The Russians complained, but there haven't been any more incidents.
All right. So
the one thing's for
that's a bit old. They were discussing an older hospital bombing. However, it is still interesting to hear about the two sides in the proxy war. And yes, I do believe it is a proxy war. All right, let's play Connect the Dots again. There was a hospital bombed. Russia has bombed hospitals before. This has been proven. There was Russian writing on the bombs. That's kind of a dead giveaway as to whose bomb it was. Hello, Russian writing on bombs. Hello. And then you try and claim the U.S. did the bombing. Houston, knock, knock, knock. Houston, knock, knock, knock. Something's rotten in Denmark with that. So I'm going to say Russia bombed the most recent hospital as well. Let's see if I can find some more up-to-date audio. All right, I'm not sure I should be bringing up a new dot right now, this close to break, but we're going to run with it. I found some interesting audio. United States Senator, yes, a sitting United States Senator, recently traveled to Damascus, Syria, the capital of Syria. Let's listen to the audio I found.
First time since the start of the Syrian crisis, a U.S. senator arrived today to Damascus in a visit for 3 days, where he is expected to meet with the head of the Syrian parliament and the Grand Mufti of the Syrian Arabic Republic after visiting the ancient city of Palmyra. The U.S. Senator Richard Blake assured during a statement to the Syrian news agency SANA that what is happening in Syria is terrorism. And the subject is simply that the terrorists are fighting the Syrian people and its legitimate government, and that there are no moderate fighter in Syria. He added also that he hopes he would be able to let the people in the U.S. to know the reality about Syria. The importance of this visit, it's in its timing, since it's a coincidence with the arrival of several international and Arab delegations to Syria. Yesterday and today, including the delegation from France, Europe Parliament and Greece, or the visit of the Algerian Minister of Maghreb and African Union, Abdul Qadir al-Mishal, all of these in a movement to break the political siege imposed in Syria by the Western powers, and in an effort to move the will of the political dialogue. For Tilisur, from Damascus, Hazm Abdullah.
Sorry about the audio breaking up at the very end there. I did feel it was important to try and keep playing it, even though it was just a reporter signing off. But yes, we had a sitting United States Senator in Damascus on the 27th of April. Time out. What is a U.S. sitting U.S. Senator doing in Damascus? Let's take a look at that. All right, here's a press conference Senator Black conducted while in Syria. He doesn't say much of anything of note, but I want you to hear his voice and hear him say whatever he has to say.
I think there is probably no more courageous nation on the face of the earth. I am concerned about Syria because, to me, the outcome of the war in Syria will determine the future of all of human civilization. It is not limited simply to what goes on here, but it is a global issue. I was very proud to meet with His Excellency the President and with the lovely First Lady. Many years ago, when I began to study intensively about Syria, I started by watching videos, lengthy videos of both the President and the First Lady, and it was much to my satisfaction that I found them to be precisely as I had always imagined them, very gracious, very intelligent, very caring and loving of Syria and the Syrian people.
All right, so this senator evidently is has the courage to stand up against the official White House policy that Bashar al-Assad must go, and the GCC, which contains a large number of our Arab allies. I'm tongue-tied today. All right. I think that's an interesting stance. I'm going to have to see what other dots I can pull up on this guy, because I may have to do a special just on him. All right. This is interesting information. We have a U.S. sitting senator in Damascus after there's a bombing in Aleppo that I think was done by the Russians. And the Russians are supporting Bashar al-Assad. We're supporting the rebels. That's hot. I must stand corrected. Senator Black is not a United States senator. He's a state senator from Virginia. I must make that correction immediately. But he still stood up and visited Syria. That's... I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this one. I'm really still trying to wrap my brain around this one. I'm going to have to reach out to his office. This is just way interesting. I'm sorry. Yeah, I understand the guy has no official role in U.S. foreign policy or anything of the sort, but for any government official at any level to visit Bashar al-Assad after the president has said Assad must go, and the GCC, our Arab allies, essentially, has said Assad must go. Wait a minute. To me, I've got one response.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
All right. While I try and wrap my head around this senator running off to visit Bashar al-Assad in Syria, we're going to go on to commercial break because I'm getting the stink eye because it's past time for the commercials. All right. See you on the flip side.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
All right, so we have a visiting state senator from Virginia who's a Republican backing Bashar al-Assad, which is against Obama, but that just, it also goes against our Arab allies in the GCC. At the same time, Obama's saying we're going to send 250 more special operators to Syria. Let's take a listen to Obama as he makes that announcement.
And just as I've approved additional support for Iraqi forces against ISIL, I've decided to increase U.S. support for local forces fighting ISIL in Syria. A small number of American special operations forces are already on the ground in Syria, and their expertise has been critical as local forces have driven ISIL out of key areas. So given the success, I've approved the deployment of up to 250 additional U.S. personnel in Syria, including special forces, to keep up this momentum. They're not going to be leading the fight on the ground, but they will be essential in providing the training and assisting local forces, they continue to drive ISIL back. So make no mistake, these terrorists will learn the same lesson as others before them have, which is your hatred is no match for our nations united in the defense of our way of life. And just as we remain relentless on the military front, we're not going to give up on diplomacy to end the civil war in Syria, because the suffering of the Syrian people has to end, and that requires an effective political transition.
All right, so there you heard Obama saying 250 more United States Special Forces personnel will be deployed to Syria in the fight against ISIS or Daesh or ISIL, take your pick. I personally know many members of the Special Forces community, hence the pseudonym. I don't want to see our men and women in harm's way, but I don't want to see ISIL having free reign. I am still trying to wrap my head around this sitting Virginia senator who went to Damascus and said, hey, Assad and his wife are good people. I do agree with Obama on the fact that the suffering of the Syrian people, I'm not talking the government, I'm not talking either side here, the average citizen in Syria who's just trying to survive day to day, that needs to end. That needs to end now. You don't know how many times I've wished for a magic wand. I would definitely pull it out and use it here. Unfortunately, magic wands don't work, and there's nothing I can personally do. But I do feel for the Syrian people, and their suffering does need to end. And part of their suffering has reportedly been at the hands of their own government, and part of their suffering has been because of the civil war. Well, I don't think that the Syrian civil war started with no cause. I'm going to have to do a special on it. We'll look into it. We'll talk about it. We'll connect the dots. But that's for another podcast. All right, I'm still scratching my head about the United States Senator, but I'm just going to move on. The state senator from Virginia visiting Bashar al-Assad, but I'm going to move on for now. And Ash Carter, the United States Secretary of Defense, spelled out our strategy in Syria and Iraq. So why don't we take a listen?
Actions we're taking to continue accelerating our campaign against ISIL. We'll be placing advisors with. Last week in Baghdad, I announced a number of key actions we're taking to continue accelerating our campaign against ISIL. We'll be placing advisors with the ISF, that is the Iraqi Security Forces, down to the brigade and battalion level to help enhance decision-making and responsiveness. We'll be leveraging Apache attack helicopters to support the ISF's ongoing efforts to envelop and then retake Mosul. We'll send additional HIMARS to support the Iraqi ground offensive there. We'll provide financial assistance to the Peshmerga, up to $415 million, to bolster one of the most effective fighting forces against ISIL. And to do all this, we're going to need to adjust how we use our forces already there and also bring in about 215 more of them. We're also doing more in Syria. As the President announced earlier this week, we're increasing U.S. forces there from sixfold, from 50 to 300. This comes after capable and motivated local forces supported by our coalition retook the East Syrian town of Shadadi, severing the last major northern artery between Raqqa and Mosul, and therefore between ISIL in Syria and ISIL in Iraq. These additional 250 personnel, including Special Operations Forces, will help expand our ongoing efforts to identify, train, and equip capable, motivated local forces inside Syria to help isolate and pressure Raqqa.
All right, I think for right now I've connected all the Syrian dots I can. I'm going to have to look into this Virginia Senator Black. I am just scratching my head on this one. So I'm going to have to take a step away from this issue. There's a couple other issues of note going on in the world that if you've been involved following nothing but the elections, you may not have heard about. North Korea's at it again. China's at it. Let's start with what China did. China passed a law, rule, something like that. Not a dinner roll, sorry. I'm tongue-tied tonight, saying that all NGOs are now under strict police control. NGO, non-governmental agency, Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, Samaritan's Purse, could also be Red Crescent for Red Cross. All right, let's take a little look at that, and I've got some audio pulled up on that.
Some international NGOs may be forced to pack up and leave China if they can't meet the requirements of a strict new law. That law puts them under the supervision of Chinese police. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports from Beijing that it's the latest move in an ongoing crackdown on civil society.
Foreign NGOs in China run the gamut from legal aid to poverty reduction. And under the new law, the police can shut down these groups' events, inspect their offices and their finances, and question their staff at any time. But Guolin Mao, an official with China's legislature, told a press briefing on Thursday there's nothing to worry about. We welcome and support all foreign NGOs to come to China, he said, and conduct friendly exchanges. Of course, which groups are friendly or hostile will be up to the police to decide. The law forbids foreign NGOs from doing anything that harms China's national interests, which critics say is a pretty vague rule. President Xi Jinping has also issued plenty of warnings recently for Chinese to guard against foreign infiltrators and subversives. Police official Hao Yunhong told reporters that Chinese government support for foreign NGOs is not unconditional.
Although we are open and tolerant, foreign groups that support or manipulate domestic groups to break China's laws will be dealt with according to the law.
David Kelly is director of research at the Beijing-based firm China Policy, which has advised foreign NGOs on how to deal with government regulation. He admits that the net effect of this law is bad. But he says China's government has been tightening the screws on Chinese and foreign NGOs for several years. And China's leaders never intended to tolerate NGOs that might check their power or hold them to account.
For foreign NGOs to come in and say, we are going to help you set up something which is going to constrain the Chinese state, well, of course the Chinese state is going to shut it down.
The bottom line, Kelly says, is that China still needs foreign NGOs' expertise, and he predicts that the current repressive atmosphere for civic groups will eventually ease.
I think that Chinese civil society will find ways to maintain its thrust. It has time on its side. It cannot be controlled by police action alone.
The new law takes effect on January 1st of next year. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Beijing.
All right, so China is trying to crack down on NGOs doing quote-unquote anything that could negatively impact the Chinese state. That's pretty vague. We already know there's no freedom of religion in China, there's no freedom of speech, and not much freedom of the press. All right, let's take a look at a few other things going on. I don't have a whole lot on it. It just came out, but it is rather interesting. All right, so we need reaction to the China NGO law. I found an article for Daily Mail UK. Daily Mail, it's from the UK. The United States said it was deeply concerned after China passed a controversial new law Thursday giving police wide-ranging powers over overseas charities. The law comes into force in January, will further narrow space for civil society in China and constrain contact between individuals and organizations in the United States and China. That's according to National Security Council spokesman Ned Price. The new measure, which prompted immediate outcry from charities and foreign governments, also bans overseas NGOs from recruiting members or raising funds in China. Recognizing that a vibrant civil society is a cornerstone of stability and prosperity, the Obama administration has expressed strong support at every level for the role of civil society in China, Price said in a statement. We urge China to respect the rights and freedoms of human rights defenders, journalists, business groups, and development professionals, and all others who make up civil society, including by protecting the ability of foreign NGOs to operate in China. There are about 1,000 foreign NGOs in China, ranging from development charities like Save the Children to environmental groups like Greenpeace, to university centers and chambers of commerce. All right, so basically I don't think this is a good law. I'm sure there's some good in it somewhere, but I don't get it. I don't see it. Why would you want to cut off your nose to spite your face? I'm going to have to watch this for a while and figure out what's going on, what's China's motive for passing this. Maybe they're feeling like there's too much Western influence, just like, let's go back to my old friend North Korea. North Korea executed 80, let that sink in for a second, 80 people. Their crime? Watching television or movies that were not produced and sanctioned by the North Korean government. Yeah. Translation, there are videos and television programs smuggled into North Korea all the time. Most of them come across the Chinese border. And if you are caught watching the wrong thing, you are sentenced to death. This is probably, of course, after a kangaroo trial and some torture and a forced confession and blah, 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 blah. So, China, are you going the way of North Korea? I think you are. Well, you two are best friends anyway. Alright, what else has North Korea been up to? Since we brought North Korea into the picture, we only have about 10 to 15 minutes left. Let's see what else my good old friend North Korea, who's always good for news, has been up to.
Is calling its underwater ballistic missile test on Saturday a success, but South Korean officials disagree. North Korean media says leader Kim Jong-un ordered and guided the submarine-launched missile, adding to the Navy's arsenal. But South Korea says this type of missile can typically travel at least 186 miles, and the test only flew a little more than 18 miles. This test comes during ongoing U.S.-South Korea military exercises and North Korean nuclear tests over the past few months. The possibility of another nuclear test has put South Korea's military on alert, and a U.S. State Department spokesman says launches using ballistic missile technology are a clear violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. But North Korea's foreign minister says U.S. nuclear threats have forced the country to continue developing its nuclear program. But those tests will stop if U.S.-South Korea military exercises end. For Newsy, I'm Melissa Prax.
All right, so North Korea's been launching more missiles. Does that surprise you? I know it didn't surprise me. They're always launching something. All right, let's take a look at what else is going on in North Korea. All right, so North Korea is launching missiles. Let's get some audio about how people view that. I view it as an aggression, but thankfully the most recent launches have failed. Let's take a listen.
How worried are U.S. officials right now about the tests that Kim Jong-un's military keeps taking?
Well, they're very worried. I mean, you saw a barrage of missiles in the last few weeks. Of course, this is in the run-up to next week's much-anticipated Workers' Party Congress. Kim Jong-un is really supposed to solidify and consolidate his leadership at this conference. And so he's really trying to project a lot of military might. Today, you saw 2 intermediate-range missiles fired. They weren't successful, but every time the North Koreans test, they gain a lot of knowledge about their program. They've had some other successes, launching a missile through a sub, which they've never done before. They also have these mobile launchers, which are more dangerous because they're more spontaneous. They can launch a missile very quickly, and so the U.S. seems almost rudderless to stop it. You had in recent months the toughest sanctions by the UN Security Council. That only seems to be emboldening Kim Jong-un. Now the Deputy Secretary of State said today they're thinking of trying to deny the regime revenue by going after remittances of North Korean workers, but it really doesn't seem anything is really going to stop Kim Jong-un. They are expecting possibly a 5th nuclear test before this party conference, and a very stern warning from the Chinese President Xi Jinping today. China, biggest benefactor, will not accept war on the Korean Peninsula. I think it's a reflection of the concern that this is really spiraling out of control.
Because Trump and others say, you know what, you really want to contain North Korea? China, they have the influence, they have the capability to get the job done. Will they do it?
Well, China looks at this strategically, and they say they don't want a nuclear North Korea, but what they want less is a unified Korean peninsula with U.S. forces, and in fact, the U.S. ally on their border. They also don't want a big outflux of refugees, a collapse of the system. So in their world, that's a bigger danger than a nuclearized North Korea.
All right, so now you
on the lamp you just bought it.
Why China doesn't care if North Korea gets the bomb. They don't want Korea reunified. They just don't want it. All right, got a couple more quick things to cover. There was mention in that audio clip about the Korean Workers' Conference. I did a little fast research on it. What is it? What's the significance? And I've also got some audio for you, but let me do some talking first. This will be the first Workers' Party Congress in over 35 years. Yes, I said 35 years. This means that the last one was held under not Kim Jong-il, but his grandfather, who he's trying to emulate. It was held under Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea. Yeah, this guy's trying to emulate his grandfather. Now he's calling for a Workers' Party conference. All right, let's take a listen to some audio I've got pulled up for you.
North Korean propaganda urges hatred for America. An undying love for the divine supreme leader.
North Korea is a kingdom.
The kingdom of Kim Jong-un, often described as a socialist monarch like his father and grandfather, ruling a militarized nation with a long history of dynasties.
The leader is not chosen. The leader is given.
We met Han Park in Pyongyang. He's the director of the University of Georgia's Department of International Affairs. The China-born U.S. citizens made more than 50 trips to North Korea in the last 35 years.
If we understand North Korea, we have to understand the system.
Park knows Pyongyang's elite inner circle.
Who controls North Korea?
The party.
Not Kim Jong-un?
No.
3 years in power, Kim commands nearly 25 million North Koreans who have no individual freedom. But Park says experienced and knowledgeable party leaders influence most decisions.
Kim Jong-un used to ask him, still I think he is asking questions about factual information about the world outside here.
Royal intrigue can be a bloody business. South Korea's spy agency says top advisors who fall out of favor, including Kim's own family, are at risk.
The fact that this young man executed his uncle, I really don't know how to explain that.
Kim's accused of ordering at least 15 executions this year alone. Allegations a top North Korean insider told me are malicious slander, though not denying executions take place. Kim projects himself as the people's leader, building water parks, hospitals, an orphanage, among many projects in the showcase capital of Pyongyang, where the elite and most loyal citizens live. But even there, infrastructure remains poor, and such luxuries are non-existent in the rest of the country, where daily survival can be a struggle.
How many North Koreans are going hungry?
Quite a few, actually, are hungry. Maybe as many as half of the population.
Despite all the praise in propaganda videos, remarkably few details of Kim's life are shared. His own people don't know he was educated for several years abroad. They don't know the names of his brothers and sisters, or that he has a child. Even Kim's age is a mystery. But North Koreans don't ask questions. The Kim dynasty continues to project an image of absolute power, demanding the people's absolute devotion. Will Ripley, CNN, Pyongyang, North Korea.
All right, so I'm having issues with the board tonight. Sorry, between the board and my My browser just acting up. So we're just going to keep moving on. This broadcast is not perfect. Thankfully, it's not live. I can still edit out a few of my bloopers. All right, so what is the Workers' Party Congress? The first order of business will be amending the charter, which is the roadmap to how the Workers' Party relates to North Korea's population. The Congress will almost certainly elect its leading official, Kim Jong-un, and will then elect members of the Central Committee, the party's leading collective authority. The Central Committee will then meet on the sidelines of the party Congress and elect people to power organizations such as the Political Bureau and Central Military Commissions. All these activities will be punctuated by reports, speeches, and of course plenty of propaganda. If North Korea wants to effect major change, this is the forum to do it. However, it's unlikely. There will be some clues that seep out. I'm not expecting any substantive policy documents, but there will be some things that seep out. I grant you there will be plenty of rhetoric. And like the audio mentioned, even Kim Jong-un's own uncle has not been safe from his purges. He executed him approximately a year ago. Now there's various rumors on the method of execution. Now, Kim Jong-il, sorry, I'm getting my Kims mixed up, never let his voice be heard. It's said that he stammered. Well, I have a little bit of audio from another CNN report where you actually hear Kim Jong-un talking. Let's take a quick listen.
South Korea, quote, war maniacs, says those nations are deploying forces, girding for nuclear war with his country. And North Korea's menacing young leader, Kim Jong-un, delivers this warning for America.
Should another war break out on this land, it will result in a deadly nuclear catastrophe, and the United States will never be safe.
What are Western intelligence agencies interpreting in that rhetoric?
What they're seeing is that North Korea once again is blaming the U.S. and its allies for the high level of tensions on the Korean Peninsula rather than North Korean actions themselves. They're also threatening, as they have been for the past 6 to 9 months, that they already can hit the United States with a missile, perhaps nuclear tipped.
This is Kim Jong-un's first public speech since the execution of his uncle, Jang Song-taek, last month, and his first personal comments about it. Without mentioning the uncle by name, Kim called him part of a group of, quote, counter-revolutionary factionalists and said their removal unified North Korea. But the purge of Kim's uncle and others close to him signified huge internal upheaval.
The violence and publicity behind this takedown of the uncle, Jang Song-taek, will cause great fear among the elite in North Korea for the near future. But the next time Kim Jong-un starts to move, the general or the family member or the party leader who sees it coming may strike back first.
That may have been the case with Kim's uncle. South Korean officials and media said recently Jang Song-taek had control of lucrative fishing grounds. They said Kim wanted to take them back, hand them to the military. And a gun battle broke out between forces loyal to the uncle and North Korean soldiers. Kim was enraged when soldiers were killed in that battle, according to those reports, and moved against his uncle. It all signifies the dangerous, unpredictable nature of this young North Korean leader. In his New Year's speech, Kim Jong-un said there should be improved relations between North and South Korea, but analysts say North Korea will launch another provocation with the South. It's not a matter of if, but when, Dana.
And that really is such an important factor here that makes this different, because South Korea's new leader is different than her predecessor.
Absolutely she is. Analysts say that the president of South Korea, her name is Park Geun-hye, is much more likely to retaliate than her predecessors were. 2 reasons for that. One, she is the daughter of a former South Korean president who the North tried to assassinate twice. And also she knows that her predecessor came under intense criticism in 2010 after 2 incidents. One when North Korea shelled a South Korean island, and another when North Korea sank a South Korean ship, killing several sailors. When that president didn't retaliate then, came under enormous pressure. She is now under enormous pressure to strike back if North Korea provokes at all. So it's on if anything happens.
Absolutely, and you can't underestimate that kind of internal pressure. It's not just about
No.
North Korea, which we're not really sure about, but South Korea.
South Korea as well.
All right, so yes, even though the Koreas aren't united, what happens in North Korea does affect South Korea. It affects the people. It affects how the political leaders go. The people don't really notice it so much. It more affects the policies, politics, and the state of readiness of the military. Disclosure here, I have visited South Korea. I have also toured the DMZ. It is a fascinating place. If you go to the DMZ, please go on a sponsored tour. Do not try and make your way there on your own. It's not safe. The area is mined. There are plenty of fences. There are thousands of troops. You don't need to accidentally fall into the wrong hands. It is a very fascinating tour. I wish everyone could have seen what I saw. Get on out of here.